In my search for a handheld that would essentially do all of the things that I want to do, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Sega Genesis, PlayStation, PSP, I found myself on Reddit trying to search for the best overall handheld I could get at a decent price point. Thanks to Reddit, I was able to find that AliExpress not only has great deals, but that specifically the TrimUI Smart Pro was under $50. Now, considering that this is a direct competitor to the RG40XXH that I already have, I figured I'd purchase both of them and see which one I like better. Now, the TrimUI Smart Pro comes in this clean box. Although there is much more to the design than there is on anything Ambernick has shown, with the nice lettering on the top and the blue stripes across, it still is pretty clean. On the back, of course, we have all of the specs, specific features for the device, etc. But I like that they show kind of all of the different colors of the device on the top of the box. Now, inside the box, of course, it comes with the nice little cover, like all of the devices do, and a manual, and of course a charging cable, as all the devices do. I like that this one is white. I feel white is just a cleaner look overall. Now, when I opened this, I immediately noticed how much lighter this is compared to any other device. As you can see, it's a very slim and slick feel. And while it looks like it could be bulky, it's actually not, and it's very thin and very lightweight. Now, I do love that it's nice and clean and slick, and all of the buttons are very much so lower to the device itself and don't pop out as much. This does only have one SD card slot, but it does have the auxiliary port, the USB-C charging port. Now, all of the buttons here are black, match the black that I paid for. But the great thing here is that this is essentially the same thing as the RG40XXH in terms of what it can do, but the screen overall is much bigger. It's a much more wider screen, and it's a lot more lightweight than the RG40XXH. Now, there's things that TrimUI Smart Pro can do that the RG40XXH can't, and vice versa. But let's power it on and take a look and see exactly what I'm talking about. Right before this, you did see on the bottom that there was a port that was covered up. That is the HDMI port that for some reason they decided to not allow for this device. It's one thing that the 40XXH has over this. Out of the box, I love the look of the UI. And this is its own Linux UI that it uses. It already comes with most of the games that I needed for Game Boy Advance, and a lot of it already has artwork set up. Obviously, right out of the box, it was pretty easy to understand where to go to find some things. But also, I liked that it has pretty much similar features to the 40XXH, like the light up analog sticks, which I will talk about in a second here. And again, right out of the box, NES works, and you can see all the games. What this is now is a 1 in 400 cartridge, essentially virtual cartridge for the SNES. So it has over 400 games in that I can choose from on there. And it actually has a Pokemon, favorites to choose from, which is really cool also. But again, all this is customizable how you would like to customize it. The simple UI is really nice. I do like that 40XXH with MUOS has so much customizability. You essentially can make it into the device that you want it to be. But overall, the OS out of box on here is really clean and sleek and super user friendly. But let's talk about some of the other features after I've customized it to how I wanted. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons for this TrimUI Smart Pro. Now, as I do with all of these devices, I try to find a custom OS or custom firmware to install on these devices because it essentially unlocks the entire potential for them. Now, for this one, there's not much. We have Nully, which has a lot of potential, but it's still in its alpha stage. And I honestly wasn't comfortable installing Nully because of that. It has a lot of stuff that's broken some devices and just caused issues that were minor, but I want to be able to play this and use this, so I did not install it. There's also Tomato OS, which is actually the most popular. But I decided to install CrossMiix OS. Now, it essentially is a fork of the stock OS, but with a lot of added features to it, which makes this actually a really, really cool device. So first, I want to talk about some of the cool features that CrossMiix allows you to do. Now, CrossMiix really is just a build off of the stock OS with some apps added in and a lot of cool features to allow you to do some cool things on the device that makes it so you don't really have to take the SD card out or fiddle with any of the files, right? So let's start here with File Manager. Pretty straightforward. On the device, you can move files from one folder to another. Now, this device does come with a internal storage. So without the SD card, you technically can run it, but there's not much on the internal storage as there's not a lot of space on it. So really, you don't need to use it. But that is cool. We have an over-the-air update. So if you want to install the newest version of CrossMiix and you have an internet connection, you can go ahead and you can do that. Now, very cool feature. Unlike MEMU where you have to reflash the SD card every time, this allows you to update over the air. No need to take anything out. No need to do any work yourself. Just open up this application and it will do it for you. Again, a great feature to have, makes things really easy. Now here we have MEMU Cleaner, excuse me. What this does is this will go through on its own and clean out any emulators from the homepage that do not have games installed. The great thing about this is it cleans up your homepage and allows you to only see what you need. And you saw how quickly that ran, about 4 or 5 seconds there. Really cool. Now, let's talk about this FN key setting here, or the function key. There's a function key on the bottom. You can slide it left to right. Now, if you go into this setting here, it will allow you to choose what you want it to do. So you can have it turn off the LEDs. You can make it quiet so there's no volume. Same here, silent mode. CPU power save, CPU performance mode, turbo button. All of these are customizable to FN key when it's to the left. Now I want it to be performance mode for things like PSP and N64. So that is what I have it set to, and I have it on for now. I will turn it off, but a very cool feature. This boot logo here allows you to change the boot logo if you would like. I have not done that, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. We have Port Master here and Screen Recorder for whoever might want to use Screen Recorder, and Terminal. For those of you who are not Linux based, this is essentially command prompts for Linux. And another cool thing is it comes with its own built-in scraper. Now, I prefer still to use Scraper UI. It just has more customizability on the look, and it actually is better at reading different names of games. So for instance, on this device, there's a lot of games with numbers in front of it, as there will be on many devices. This built-in scraper can't decipher that, so it will not find artwork for it. But it's still a cool feature to have on here to be able to, in the device, grab artwork. Really cool. And that's pretty much in terms of applications that CrossMiix OS add. Now, built into the device stock without any customized firmware or OS is this USB storage application. Now, I know a lot of you, like myself, have sort of a fear of taking out the SD card, putting it back in, taking it out again, messing with that to get everything on here that you need. The great thing about this is I can essentially plug in my USB-C wire here into the bottom, and it will read it on my computer without taking the SD card out of the device. Now, with CrossMiix, this is essentially broken in this current build, but they are working on that right now, and it should be fixed in the next build. Not a huge deal. I don't mind taking the SD card out, especially with another feature I'm going to let you guys know in a second, where it's not necessarily an essential function right now. Now, if we go here and we go to System Tools, there's a lot of stuff that CrossMiix OS allows you to do. Here you can set settings and behaviors for your emulators. You can auto load state, which I have enabled. You can change all of the overlay settings for all of your emulators. You can have it resume at boot. So if there's a specific game you're playing you want to turn it off to save power, you can have it resume that game immediately if you would like once you power it on. PSX analog detector will run through all of your emulators and games to see which ones use the analog stick for PS1. And then here you can reset to default your RetroArch cores. So a lot of cool features here in the tools. LEDs here, this is to set the color scheme for your LEDs. You can have it to where it reflects a color depending on your CPU speed, which is really helpful. Also the same thing for your temperature. If it gets too hot, it'll be red. Cooler is cooler color. Or you can just do a rainbow setting, which I believe is on right now. Now here is the fun stuff. So for network, you have the ability to do SSH, Telnet, SFTP Go, and SMB. The cool thing about this is as long as you have a network connection to your network and you have a computer, SMB will allow you to view the contents of this device and the SD card as if it was just a folder on your computer. Really easy way to move things back and forth instead of, again, taking out the SD card out of the slot and messing with that. Every time you take it out and enter it into the device, you're risking ruining the SD card and the port on the device. That's for any device. Luckily, this allows you to be able to do that. So again, really cool features there. Here we have a bunch of themes. This is not the only place to choose your themes, but this is definitely a spot to do it. And then you can sort themes out of alphabetically if you would like to. Under advanced settings, you have backgrounds. You can change emulator labels. You can change your icons. Again, themes, the top left logo, which is this up here. Emulator labels, everything here. If you want to customize, you can. We have tools here. You can set the CPU to its max, which will obviously help with running more labor-intensive games, but deplete your battery and make your device a little hotter. I suggest not playing with this unless you know what you're doing. This is more so for the avid gamers like myself who understand what this does. The really cool thing about this is it has a Q generator and an M3U playlist generator. For those of you who are keen on how the PlayStation works, some of them have multiple files or multiple disks, and a lot of times you can create a file with information on how to run those files called an M3U file. This file is essentially a text where you have to write where the files are located and then what the files are for it to run effectively. On my RG40XXH, I have to use M3U files for it to play PlayStation correctly. And it's also kind of a better way of cleaning up the folders and such. This will do it for you. Instead of having to go in and manually create these text files, type everything out, this will do it for you. It's essentially had about 95% success rate on all the PlayStation, Sega Saturn games, etc. that I've used it for. There's been one or two that it didn't work for, but otherwise it has worked perfectly fine. And this is to format UDisk partitions on the device. It allows you to access storage of 6 gigabytes directly on the device storage. Again, something more for advanced users, not necessarily something you need, but a really cool feature to have. So all of these things, you can also sort your favorites alphabetically here. So again, a lot of these tools are really, really awesome. You can also set how you want the best section to look. You can add icons for your best folders if you like. You can set what you want your starting tab to be when you power on the device. All really cool customizability things that CrossMiix OS allows for you to use. So now we've talked about CrossMiix. Let's talk about stuff that comes with stock here and why I think this device kind of beats the rest of them, especially at this price point, to be honest with you. We have here this bigger screen, right? We have a wide screen for PSP, PS1, and 64. I know those are 4:3, but it's nice to have bigger screens, especially if you like playing those games in the highest quality possible. Remember that GBA as well is also a wider screen than Game Boy and Game Boy Color. And also, if you want to play NDS on here, you can. Just remember that there is no touch screen. But for games like Pokemon and some of the Zelda that have ports to where they've modded them to be able to use without touchscreen, you can do it on this device. And with the wider screen, you would be able to fit both screens on here and still see pretty well and pretty decent quality. But the larger screen here is amazing, especially compared to other devices you would compare it to. like the RG40XH. So that's pretty incredible there. If we go back to settings, just so we can talk about this. Again, this is with stock. We're able to adjust a lot of the screen on this one. So we have brightness, we have the LEDs and its brightness, lock screen time we can set, contrast, saturation, color, temperature, exposure, all of these to customize the settings for the screen itself, which is something that most of the other devices are missing. Obviously, you can control the volume here. You can say whether it has background volume, and this comes with a vibrating function, which again, none of the other devices do. Wi-Fi here. This has its own hotspot. Not necessarily sure if I'd ever use this, but if this has a network device and you want to be able to pair it with another device like an RG40XH, and you wanted to play with each other through NetPlay, that would be a great way to utilize that. This one has Bluetooth. RG40XH does not have Bluetooth. So this is cool if you want to, like I have my Galaxy Buds, if I wanted to connect that to here to play in the evenings and have sounds of the games. I won't wake up my family when I'm playing these in the middle of the night. You can also add a Bluetooth keyboard and a Bluetooth controller, which is great for PSP, PlayStation 1, to kind of have the new updated controllers that feel much better than this controller system here, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Again, we can set the themes. I downloaded a bunch of themes here that I wanted to add that I'll probably use, but right now I'm using this Charizard one, which actually comes with some music. So let's play that. Really cool. Again, nothing major there, but kind of like a nice to have, right? But yeah, we have key mapping here that you can change and set if you would like. I think most of these, I'm not going to do it, but you can have it to where it rotates. You can have it to where, you know, each of these buttons are something different. Make it be like PlayStation instead of Nintendo, things like that. So that's really a breakdown of this device. If we're going to talk about the buttons here, I'm very happy with the R1, L1, and the triggers, opposed to the retro pocket, which are extremely loud. I love the feel of this one and how thin they are. I'm not a big fan of large buttons for these, so I'm happy with that. The only thing I'm not happy with are these analog sticks. If you ever played the PSP, you'll know what I'm talking about when I tell you that this is very much like that. They're very sleek, they're very thin, but they don't feel great on your thumbs. And they do feel very cheap, and they're not as reactive as I would like them to be. And there's also no L3, R3. Not that we would need it for this device because we don't have any PS2 or PS3, but still would be cool to be able to, you know, set that as like a fast forward button or something like that. Again, that's me nitpicking, but this is probably the only thing I actually don't like about this device. But other than that, I really do love the device. I love the functionality key. You can see here, and I mentioned before, this is where the HDMI port would be. For some reason, they added it to this, but they are disallowing the use of it. We have a microphone for certain games like NDS that requires a microphone. We have the DC port, and we have an aux jack. We have another USB-C. This is mostly for getting into the device. Does not charge, and you cannot transfer any files over. With power button and the volume buttons. It's very sleek and very thin and very lightweight. I'd say the lightweight kind of moves a little bit into feeling a little bit cheap, but at this price point, honestly, I think it's a steal. The fact that it allows you to do things that the RG40XH can't and can is a win, in my opinion. And I think with that one being 70 and this one being 50 and it being able to do so many different things, I do think I would recommend this. If you want one that's a little bit stronger, that can play a lot of these things and you don't mind the smaller screen, I'd say the 40XH is probably a better bet. But again, it all depends on preference. If you're only trying to play, you know, some of the lower end stuff like Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, NES, Sega Genesis, RG40XH is the way to go. If you're trying to play the higher end things like PSP, Sega Saturn, that needs a bigger screen, I'd say go with this one. But I will say this, you're not going to go wrong either way. But I think for the price point, if you were going to nitpick here, this is the best bang for your buck. The TrimUI Smart Pro is really slim. It's really functional. It has a lot of awesome advanced features that a lot of other devices don't. It has the bigger screen, the ability for Bluetooth and NetPlay, and also allows you to be able to utilize the SD card and the internal storage without taking out the SD card. So overall, I'm very happy with this device. I actually was very surprised when I got it at this price point of what it can do. I will say that if you value overall usage with performance, that this might not be the best device for you in terms of the PSP games having lower than 30 frames per second. I'm talking 26 is as low as it went for me, while the RG40SX-H on PSP was steady at 30. So if you value performance, I would say that's probably a better bet. But for overall, everything at the $50 price point is this device is definitely a recommendation for me. I'm very happy with it. I love the bigger screen. I love that it's still compact enough to fit in my pocket. I mean, it's not even bigger than my hand, so it fits in my pocket, very lightweight, and I don't really need a computer to customize it in any way or change anything on it. It can all be done on the device. Along with the functionality of being able to add a Bluetooth controller. All of that stuff is amazing. I recommend this for those of you who don't want to spend a fortune, but also want to be able to play all of your favorite retro games. I think it's a great investment for you, especially in the long term. Go ahead, look out for these, and just remember that all of these devices are being updated. All of these OSs are being updated consistently, and happy gaming.